Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Stories. I am 1/3 of your host this week. I am Jared Moses, and I'm here with
Jaylon Gundis.
Charles.
And today we are talking about the film Your Name, which is a wonderful anime, and we have lots of things to talk about. But one of the things that we are going into specifically as a specific topic is the question of, have you ever wondered why so many stories, even the ones that aren't about romance, slip into romantic subplots? Today's episode, we're going to dive into why we're so drawn to intimacy in all of its forms and how it can either elevate or derail a story. And we're going to explore how Your Name uses romance to drive its emotional core and whether that was the right choice for the narrative. And by the end, you'll know how to decide whether your story needs a romantic subplot or if the characters are just better off in the friend zone. That being said, if you find that you are wrestling with subplots or romantic stories of any kind of your own, we make sure that we help authors find the strength in their stories. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Also, so we have a bonus gift, as we do in every single episode, much to Jaylon's dismay.
Okay, I love you all enough to put these together every week.
But we will have a romantic subplot quick guide that is also going to be in the show notes. So grab that as your little roadmap to your own romantic subplots or your romantic plots overall. And then, of course, Charles's least favorite segment of the show, we have the Devil and Angels Advocate segment, which we will do. But Charles is not participating and is in protest.
It's still garbage, by the way. This segment is still garbage. It's only for clickbait, and I hate it. It's bad.
Fair.
Fair enough. I will not argue.
You don't lie.
You do not. Okay, so today, as we said, we're talking about Your Name. I am terrible at name pronunciation, so I will allow Charles to pronunciate our director's name.
I believe it is Makoto Shinkai.
Yes, and this is the 2016 anime film. If you have not seen it, I suggest you do. I know Jaylon was just introduced to it. I was just introduced to it about maybe a year ago, I think.
Folks, my hosts are noobs. They are learning otaku. Babies first.
Yes.
Charles is our gracious guide along this
I'm the
amazing...
only otaku here, so when I say Tom Toonami, they probably go, huh? Like the cat.
No, I do. I know Tom Toonami. I know that. That I do know. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that fact. But he is correct about our recent journey into the realm of anime and all the different things that it has to offer us as storytellers and fans of story. So, that being said, does anybody want to break down what the film is about before we get into like all the questions and all the goody goodies?
I would like to, because I have a very specific thing to say that I think is helpful for this conversation. It's not just me ranting. Okay, so stick with me here. So Makoto Shinkai is crap. Hang on. Stick with me here. So, for some God knows what reason, Makoto Shinkai got really, really big in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And somehow, some way, I saw most of his movies before Your Name. I don't know how this happened. What is it? 5 centimeters per second. Place further beyond the universe? No, I can't remember. It's the Japanese war one. I totally blanking on the name. Children Who Chase Lost Voices. You know what? I'm gonna look it up. Sorry, folks. Because it's driving me nuts. It's like my brain can pull this up all the time
until it needs to. I'm right there with you.
The Gardener Words and The Place Promised in Our Early Days. Okay, yeah. So somehow I saw these movies, and they're bad. They're really bad. Like 5 centimeters per second is genuinely hilariously bad. And this guy's production inspired a movie called Flavors of Youth, which is even worse. It is Flavors of Youth features a guy who claims to be in love with this girl that he knew in school that he never talked to and only saw her ride a bike by across the noodle shop. It is that bad. Okay.
So the insta-love trope that I always complain about.
It's not love. He's a serial killer. Me and my siblings.
Okay, never mind.
Siblings have a theory.
Sit down.
Neither here nor there. But I find his artwork to just be really, really. It's so gorgeous. I'm like, it's very computery. It's very artsy. There's always a moment in a Shinkai movie of the food porn scene where it's like, oh, look, he's cutting so exquisitely the food. And I'm like, I don't know, better anime have done it. And it's just, they're all filled with a bunch of teenagers who are helplessly in love, like the most gooey love thing in the world. And they all spout nonsensical rantings about philosophy. And you just want to slap them. Somehow, some way, even though society hates this kind of crap, people fell in love with this guy's work. And they kept making comparisons between him and Hayao Miyazaki of Studio Ghibli, which is laughably ridiculous. I believe even Shinkai himself said that was kind of ridiculous, or to some degree. And so when Your Name came out, and I heard it's a body swap movie, I was like, oh, that's really neat. So for those who don't know, it's about a teenage boy and a teenage girl, and they wake up and their bodies are swapped, and shenanigans and romance ensues, and then there's a twist. A really big twist. I saw this movie, I went, God, no, it's a thing. But this movie, for those who don't know, I was interested in it but then when I heard it was Makoto Shinkai, I was like, it's gonna be the same crap. So I kind of avoided it for a little while. But if you don't know, if you're outside the anime circles or whatever, this movie was huge. I mean, we're talking like Titanic huge. You could not escape it. Like, honestly, until just recently, I feel every freaking anime movie was basically a knockoff of this movie, recent anime films. It's ludicrous. It makes no sense. We're finally getting there. But I finally saw the movie because I had to, right? Anime, etc. And what's interesting, the reason I bring this up is nothing that Shinkai does is not in this movie. Everything he does in this movie, there's the food porn shot, which, again, Studio Ghibli does better. Anyway, there are these bland characters, stick with me, these bland characters where they're oh so romantic and they're teenagers, and there's Tokyo and there's nature and conversations about who are we and the threads of time and blah 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 blah. It's melodramatic AF. But you know what's interesting? The very ending of this movie, I was like, the reason I bring this up is it's something that's, I think, fascinating. And then the thing is, Shinkai did this again with Weathering With You. Same thing. Oversaturated art style, blandish characters, annoying little teenage romance melodrama. And it really worked. And he did the same thing with Suzume, the movie that came out, I think, 2-3 years prior. Same thing. And it's really good. And the reason I find this fascinating is that Shinkai did two things. He did one, he stuck to his guns, but he allowed the style to evolve. So it's still melodramatic garbage, but he took out the garbage part by making it something that we cared about. So he still kept to his gun. So if I was like basically over his shoulder, I would have been, Shinkai, this is stupid. What are you doing? He just went, screw you. I'm going to do what I want. It worked because he stuck to his guns, but he allowed himself to grow rather than have it stagnate. The other thing in this that's really, really important to understand is, and this was a theory of mine for a long time, and then Shinkai did confirm it with Suzume, he was very affected by the 2011 Japanese earthquake and tsunamis. Really affected. And if you see this movie, you will understand why. Same with Weathering You. It's explicit in Suzume. All three of these movies are quite good. But what he did was he took his pain and knowing the world was different, and he infused that into his art. And I think that's what suddenly made his last three films really good and really effective. And so the reason I say all that for this is that when you look at this movie, it's a body swap movie. It's not John Hughesy. Mamoru Hosoda did a movie, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. It's more like a John Hughes movie. This is not a John Hughes movie. I'm trying to think. It's almost like, it's like an R-rated Disney Channel movie, actually, now that I think about it, in terms of tone. But I bring this up to say that it's what Shinkai was into, but he also infused his own pain with a lot of real-world stuff to make something that actually works. So my compliment is, the reason why Shinkai is fascinating to me is he changed by sticking to himself, but allowing himself to grow up, which I find fascinating. That was a bit of a rabbit hole as to what the film is, but I had to get that out there because I genuinely find it fascinating, because I feel like writers are like, oh, I have to change. Shinkai didn't change. He just got better at what he did and made it work. So I think that's a really important lesson for people. That's my TED Talk.
Good job. I really appreciate how you pointed out you get better at your craft by writing about things that matter and trying to help other people process pain that you have experienced.
Yeah, and to that end too, that's what Shinkai has done with these last three films. At least for me, this is just my opinion, everyone. But for me, all the other stuff, it was flamby-pamby teenage garbage. This movie's about something. Weathering with You is about something. Suzume is about something. Like, stuff you can actually sit with. And that's really great.
I think one thing I want to point out, and I think it's a common thing that happens. One, I think that Charles was right that there was definitely a lesson in what he said, especially in the idea of sticking to who you are. We were just talking about this before we started the podcast about authenticity and the importance of being yourself and doing what's you. And I think that so many of us have this idea that if we chase this trend or we chase this thing that's really popular right now and try to squeeze ourselves into what everybody else wants, I want to write the dark fantasy or the dark romance thing because that's what's popular right now and everybody likes spice. So I want to write a really spicy book for the fun of it. But if you're not a spicy writer, it's going to suck and you're going to suck at it and it's not going to work out. So don't do it.
Miserable too.
Yes, exactly. So instead, write, if your thing is about sailing, the back channels of some old river place or whatever in some distant village, if that's your thing, write about that because there's going to be a passion that you're going to bring to it that nobody else is going to be able to bring to it. And that's what's going to make it good. The other thing is that we talk about it a lot on this podcast. People suck. And people sucking at stuff. And or just films that suck or stories that have been like shitty. We had a whole 2.5 hour conversation about Twilight and all the reasons why, it's, not necessarily sucky. To me, it sucked. But I mean, to everybody else, it was like there are redeemable qualities in it. All that aside, I mentioned this to Jaylon the other day, and I wanted to bring it up on the podcast as I was watching on TikTok the other day, a producer, Timbaland, who was doing lives and listening to people's music. And many of the people that were on there were just not very good at what they did. The thing that I really liked about him, and I want to kind of bring that here, is he never said, "You suck at this, give it up." He never said that. It was always, "You're not quite where you need to be yet. You still got work to do." That one phrase, "you still have work to do." I don't know why, but it has resonated with me all week. Because for me, if there's one thing anybody who knows me knows that I care about probably more than anything else is my craft. I want to be insanely good at what I do. And I'm obsessed with becoming that. And I think a lot of people who write, a lot of people who tell stories want to do that. A lot of people genuinely want to be really good at this thing. We want to be, legendary. We want to be mentioned with the names of, big name I don't know what I was going to say wrestlers. I'm sorry. Big name.
The Undertaker.
We did Creed last week.
But big name authors and big name directors or whatever, we all want to be lumped in and one day, be that significant individual. And then the thing that sticks with us is the fact that at bat that we have at it is very rarely ever going to be that at first. I've been thinking about that a lot with my novel coming out of just like, I want people to be like, this is incredible. And it's like, my mentor gave me some advice this past weekend and I want to share it with you guys. Once you finish doing the thing that you're putting out, forget about it. Move on to the next one. Don't worry about if people think it's great. Don't worry about what people think. Just figure out what you did right in it, figure out what you did wrong, and then the next one, do better. 1% better will always make you infinitely better down the line. And I say all of that not to get off topic of the story that we're talking about, but just because I felt like it was something that needed to be said for the writer who is out there right now questioning whether or not you have what it takes to do this, whether you think your stuff is good or not, or you think you're ever going to be the legend that you envision in your mind that you might want to be someday. That even if you're not quite there yet, you still have some work to do. You can get there by just showing up and keep on doing it. So,
and to add to that conversation too, with me, I was a big critic of Shinkai. But here's the thing. After Suzume, there's a cat character in there who's adorable and mischievous and funny. And after, I was gifted with a plushie of the cat. The reason I say this is because I said, I would love a plushie of this cat. The reason I say that is I went from being a critic, and all my criticisms of his earlier films are fair. I still don't like them. But I ended up really caring about his work enough to say I'd love a plushie of him on my desk. So if you can change me, you can do that too. Like me, it's not permanent.
For sure.
Change over time. So and there's the living proof right there on my desk.
Getting to another rabbit hole, adding to this conversation. As artists, as creatives, I think we all have a little bit of perfectionism in us. But there's also a truth that no story will ever be perfect because creativity as an art is subjective. Someone, the market could decide objectively that a story is bad because it won't sell, but you'll always find someone who finds the value in your story, and it's going to touch them. So it's still worth putting it out there, even if your perfectionism says it's not perfect yet.
That's true. That's true. And I was just saying that the other day too about that. Like, it's like we're a part of a craft that doesn't allow for objective truth, truly. Because like you can look at LeBron James, you can look at Michael Jordan, and you can say objectively those are great basketball players because the numbers say so. But when it comes to writing a story, when it comes to directing a movie, when it comes to those kinds of things, technically speaking, you can't ever really say this is objectively bad because generally taste is what determines what's good and bad. What's good for me is terrible for maybe terrible for Charles, or maybe terrible for Jaylon, or vice versa. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the product itself is good or bad. The product just is. And you just kind of have to figure out where you sit on that scale of whether or not it's good or bad based on what you enjoy. And so I think the interesting thing about what you said too about Makoto Shinkai's catalog is it's the at-bats that he has had over the course of time have made him a better storyteller, a better director, a better screenwriter. And I think that's kind of the way it goes with all forms of writing. And I think that's something that I'm talking to myself in that moment when I say that, but I think I'm also talking to the writer that needs to hear it too, is that, your debut novel, your second novel, your second screenplay, whatever, it's probably not going to be the greatest thing, since the Bible, but I mean, it's still, that's an at-bat. That's a chance to say, okay, this is what I'm good at. I'm good at doing this. I'm not great at doing that. So maybe I'll steer more towards this, and also kind of finding what you like, what you're really comfortable with. What are the stories you really like telling, and going and telling more of those. And I think Makoto Shinkai is an example of that exactly, of kind of like, I like telling these kinds of stories. I like telling them this kind of way, and just kind of cutting the fat out a little by little every single time until you just have solid stuff every time you go out. And that's kind of cool. I think that's a cool thing. The other thing that I'll say, the last thing I'll say before we jump back into it, is that my film mentor said to me this week, and he was like, we no longer write stories on stone anymore. So at the end of the day, you can always go and do another draft. You can always go and try again. It's, you know what I mean? We're not chiseling our way through story anymore. So it's totally fine to have a shitty draft. It's totally fine to be like, oh, okay, this was an ugly bitch that has to sit in the drawer for a while, and that's totally fine. I have plenty of them. Jaylon has seen them, unfortunately.
They're not, and they still have value in them that I appreciate, even if it's something that the rest of the world will never see. There's still value to be had in a story that's told from a specific place that you're in your life. It's something that you can look back on and say, this is how I've grown.
True. In fact, Charles has seen some of them too.
I was just reminded of one of the short films I did in college last night, and I wanted to cry because I tried to do something. I tried to do something, and I was not skilled enough to do it, and it comes off really ham-fisted. So the movie that I was inspired by, I can't watch this beautiful scene now. So I will take your word for it.
Sometimes you have to just take it in the back of the barn and shoot it, and that's okay. It's okay. It's all right. But, it's all right. We're good. We're all okay here.
You are in good company. We all experience it.
Did we just lose Jaylon?
No.
We lost her.
Oh, no.
I think we did. It's crazy. She was like, it was like a ramp up, and then she was just like gone.
Wait,
there she is.
I'm still here.
It was like a cartoon, just like, whoa! Then you were gone.
It is way too sunny of a day here. I keep trying to, turn away from the sun. It keeps attacking me.
It's like the old little Bible cartoons where God was just like a beam of light. So for years, I thought that. Every time there was like a beam of light, I was like, it's God! Because I was very confused.
You know what's funny about that moment that Jaylon just had? It reminded me of the scene in this movie when Mitsuha was writing her name on Taki's hand, and then when the golden hour just ends and the pen just drops. That is what that moment just reminded me of. Like, Jaylon was getting ready to talk, and it was just like, poof.
I'm dead.
But here's the first question, and this is like an overall question. But why do we think that romantic subplots in general, not to say that this particular film is a subplot, but in general, why do we think that romantic subplots draw us in so strongly?
I'll take a crack at this one, if the sun will let me. I feel like as humans, part of stories is we all want to be seen. We all want to be understood. We want our experiences in this human life to be validated and to know that we're not alone. And so that kind of intimacy, I really loved when I heard someone describe intimacy as into me you see. It's not just a physical thing. It's your soul, your mind is known and understood and still loved and made space for. And I think that that is a core need that we all have as humans. And it's a need that stories address because it's a way for you to see someone else say, me too. I've been there too. So I see romance as something that you can always fall into when you're trying to write a story that shows this kind of intimacy.
Yeah, I think there is, and there's not really a need to get into it detail because we all know it. I think on a cynical level, we fall into it because, frankly, everyone is horny in some capacity. and that sounds like a joke, which is partially a joke, but I mean that in the sense that everyone is horny and sex sells, so they always have romance. Like, honestly, if you've ever seen a film prior to the 60s that didn't have a romantic subplot, I cannot think of one.
Yeah.
That's because it's an easy marketing, right? It's an easy tool. But I think people are drawn to romance because it's kind of weird, but like, okay, I'm going to use an example here that's kind of an interesting thing. So in The Little Mermaid, right, when Eric is with Ursula the human, right, and Ariel's on the dock, and she's crying, right, never clicked with me as a kid. And then after I had my heart broken for the first time when I was in high school, I watched that movie and I saw the scene and I got what Ariel was feeling intimately in a way that I never had. And I think the thing is once you feel romance, love, intimacy for the first time, it's not that you're chasing it, but it's a tenderness that you understand. It's like a whole different shade of the world is now in your view and you can't ignore it. And I think that's why people are drawn to those stories, because they are interesting stories. There are interesting stories of people finding each other, losing each other, hurting each other, changing, and etc. Even to the most like ridiculous soap opera things. Like, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but in my headcanon of X-Men, Scott Summers' second boo, Emma Frost, is way more interesting than Jean Grey. But the idea that in the X-Men canon, Scott meets Jean Grey and he goes, "Oh, puppy dies, baby, I love you, forever." Then she dies. Yeah, I know she comes back, whatever. I don't want to talk about that. It's stupid. But she dies, and Scott has to move on, and eventually he finds this, Emma Frost, who was a villain, a psycho villain, and challenges him and loves him in a different way, and he loves her in a different way. There is something kind of amazing about that. And I think once you know that shade of romance, you can't quite let it go because it is something that is special and interesting and human beyond what the perfume commercials would make you think.
Relationships in general are the core of our human experience, and messy humans trying to figure out how to get along, get through life with other messy humans is something that everyone relates to, everyone experiences it. So whether the relationship is father and son, whether it's mother and daughter, whether it's sister and brother, there is a connection in relationships that everyone can relate to. It's a universal truth. But I think in romance, it's an easier thing to fall into because it also sells well, because it's something that everyone can idealize in an easy way. And yeah, also sex sells.
I agree with that. I agree with both of you. I think another thing I would add, and it kind of aligns with what you guys are saying too, is wish fulfillment. I think all of us want to be loved. All of us want to love someone. And connection, human connection. We all crave it. It's built into our DNA to connect with one another. Because even I don't care, you can be the most introverted of introverts, but you still need people. you still need to interact with people in some way, shape, or form, and in relationships and romance. I think I agree. It doesn't necessarily even have to just be romance. Great examples of this are like the case study of Vanitas and the anime, which shows the incredible bromance. Or for those that are more who are not as into anime, one of the most infamous bromances of all time in fiction, or modern fiction, I guess, would be Supernatural, Dean and Sam Winchester, which spawned a whole, weird romantic fan fiction, but that's besides the point.
Do you remember the old Supernatural fandom days? Pepperidge Farm remembers. I remember that.
So, but I mean, that level of brotherhood, of just seeing them, and regardless of what you think of Supernatural, I have my own thoughts on Supernatural, but that's a story for another day. But I think, regardless of what you think about it, their relationship is the idea of what people loved it so much, because we all want that. We all, whether, like I said, we don't all necessarily want a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife, but we all do want a best friend, or someone who's like a sister or a brother to us that we will see through to the end. Sam and Frodo, that kind of thing, that person that will go to the end of the earth with you. We all love that idea, and we also recognize the highs and lows of those relationships. I've always been a big fan of romantic subplots. I have them in every single story I have, and it's always been because I understand those relationships very, very well, and I think that. But what I enjoy more than that is putting those relationships through the ringer, because I think that those make the strongest relationships in the end. I mean, if you ever think about any relationship you've ever had, whether it be romantic or platonic, the strongest relationship that you have is only as strong as the worst thing you have ever gone through with that person. And I think that when it comes to stories like Your Name and otherwise, I think this is exactly why we like it. And I think it's why we ship people and why we love, and we're just like, oh, I love that couple, or I love those guys, because it's like, oh, we've watched them literally go to hell together and come back. Or sometimes, in Supernatural,
sometimes
they literally go to, in Supernatural they literally go to hell and they come back a few too many times, but nonetheless,
sometimes funny, sometimes it's bleeping annoying, no?
Exactly. And so I think the other one is that love is also the most relatable motivator for anything. I think that's the one quality, besides maybe anger and maybe sadness too. But besides those two, I think love is probably the most easiest, most relatable thing that every single person on the planet can understand. And it doesn't necessarily, like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. Because you may have never had a boyfriend, never had a girlfriend before, but you know what it's like to love somebody. You know what it's like to care about somebody, possibly even more than yourself, and be willing to do whatever for. And I think that watching someone care about someone automatically raises the stakes, because the moment you put that person in peril, the moment you put the relationship in peril, the moment you challenge them in some way, shape, or form, it automatically becomes more interesting now, because it's like, oh, okay, what's going to happen? And I think that's why so many writers add the romantic subplot to their stories. I agree, sex does in fact sell. I agree that, everybody is horny, and that does make sense. But I also think everybody just wants to be loved. We're all pathetic like that, and that's cool. No, I'm kidding. But we're all just lovesick. I think as human beings, we're all just lovesick, and we all want somebody to love us. We all want to love somebody else. Even sociopaths and psychopaths want to be loved, which is weird, but it's true.
Can you imagine the torture of needing to... Okay, this is getting more into, from the perspective of an anti-hero. But can you imagine the torture of wanting to be loved and not being able to make sense of human connection?
Oh, yeah. That's good. That's rich. I like that.
We'll just drop that there for any of you who needed this writing prompt. That's there.
Yeah, drop that little nugget right there for you. Feel free to use that where you like. But yeah, so here's another question. Why does the romance between Taki and Mitsuha feel natural despite the fantastical premise? And by this, I mean, just for clarity's sake, I feel like this story could have worked as just a romantic story about missed opportunities and missed moments, even just a body swap element. I think the story could have worked just fine. I don't think it would have been as good as it is, but I think that it definitely could have worked. But I think a big part of that is the relationship between Taki and Mitsuha. That being said, why do you guys think that it feels, or do you feel that it's a natural, that it feels natural despite everything else, or do you feel that the fantastical element is what made it work?
This is something that I answer very personally, because in my mind, I have always craved someone to understand my life in the sense that they live my days through my eyes. Because I feel like that's an intimacy that you can't just expect someone to have. It's almost impossible. No matter how empathetic someone else is, it's impossible to fully experience life from another human's shoes. And that's something that I've always craved in my own relationships. And maybe it's just the need to feel understood and validated, but I feel like that's the deepest form of intimacy, is seeing life through someone else's eyes, being able to get into their head and understand them. And in this case, they literally got into each other's bodies and understood each other, got to know each other's lives. So that kind of intimacy immediately made me understand why they cared about each other. They cared about each other as much as they did themselves, because the other person was themselves for a while. So I found that extremely tender and sweet, but also very understandable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one, it does work because if for nothing else, they actually get to know each other.
Yeah.
The date thing. So, side note here, I told Jared this. So I saw The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which apparently features a plotline of first cousins trying to bang each other.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is okay with this.
Okay.
I did not like this. But
please no.
Forget that for 5 seconds. I don't care if they're first cousins wanting to bang each other. I didn't believe they had chemistry. It didn't feel like they really cared about each other. It just felt like, you're hot, that's that, right? And that's it. Drives me nuts in romance stories. Drives me nuts. I think they do this very well. I think what is interesting, though, about the body swap is I think it would have worked even without the fantastical element. The fantastical element it's like a metaphor of dating. So this is their version of dating. But if they were able to date normally, it would have been the same thing. And I think that's very interesting, because something that always really stuck with me is when I think he's in her body and he's carrying the grandma, I can't quite remember,
Mm-hmm.
to the hill. There's a moment where she looks at your granddaughter, and she's like, "You look different." And it's interesting because you start to realize where they begin and where they end has been kind of mixed, which I think is very fascinating. But if you want in terms of the dating aspect, I've always interpreted that as it's a metaphor, or it can be interpreted as a metaphor of dating. So I think it does actually work because they get to put in the effort, which is where plot comes in. So instead of going we have their body swap now, they have to establish rules, and they get to actually see each other's lives in a different sort of way, which builds into them trying to meet and stuff that happens after the fact. But I think it does work, and I think the fantastical nature is just a fun way of spinning the same thing you've seen since, I don't know, It's a Wonderful Life or something.
Okay, so before I say, I agree with both of you, and I think you're both correct. In line with what Charles was just talking about with Godfather 3, as well as just with this in general, here, the way that he describes the first cousins wanting to, be together, he's right. He's right about the fact that,
oh, thank God.
He's right. He's right about the fact that there's no chemistry. It just seems like when they wrote the film, it was just kind of a way, like, we want to put two characters that shouldn't be together, or that would publicly be considered no. So let's just kind of throw a little Romeo and Juliet type of thing into this. But it really had no point other than that. So I agree with him completely. A book that I have read that does this, that actually does it well, is Forbidden. And Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma, it doesn't remind me of Your Name per se, but it's the idea of it, because it's about, and bear with me, judge me all you like, it's fine, I'm okay with that, I'm ready for that. But anyway, it's about this brother and sister who fall in love with each other, and they're raising their younger siblings together, because they have this mom that is just completely irresponsible, and they're forced to be the adults, and they're forced to handle things that no teenagers or normally should be handling. They start to see each other in a light that no teenager should ultimately see another teenager in. And although it's not it's a romance book to an extent, in the sense that no, they don't like stay together and they're together, and it's not a happy ending book. It's a book that this isn't okay, and it makes it very clear that this is not okay, but it's understandable how it happens. But this is one of those examples of like romance being where you have these two characters that, because they see each other's struggles, each other's pain, each other's suffering, the way that you talk about Mitsuha and Taki, how they experience each other's lives and going through each other's lives and going through those moments and getting to know each other through trauma and struggle. Forbidden does exactly that. It's going through these moments of having to raise your younger siblings, get them up for school, take them, one gets sick and having to bring them to the hospital together, and both of you at the ER, and neither of you knowing what to do, one being 16, the other 17, and just not knowing what you're supposed to do, and then trying to get your mother to love you like a mom is supposed to, not your best friend, and just doing that. And so surviving together is what made you love each other. And I think that in Your Name, it's a similar thing. I think it's less traumatic until we kind of reveal the big ultimate traumatic thing that's about to happen. But it's at first it's a lot lower stakes for their getting to know each other, but nonetheless it is in fact a very, very interesting way of doing it. So I think it was natural. And I also really relate to, I appreciate, Jaylon, you being vulnerable and sharing that with us. But I think I relate to that very much so, because I think the reason why I've connected with Jaylon and why I've connected with you, Charles, as well, is there is a I see you kind of thing about our relationship as a group. I understand you. I understand, whether it's sheltered existence, whether it's, just mental health, no matter what it is, I understand all of these different concepts. For me personally, I can only speak for how I see things. But from my side of things, I've always felt that I've been able to connect with you guys because I can't see it as well as Taki and Mitsuha have, because I don't wake up in either one of you guys' bodies. But overall, I understand the struggles, the things that you guys deal with on a regular basis. And it infinitely brings me closer to the both of you. And I think that that's kind of why this works so well for them, is like you said, going through that trauma, going through those struggles together kind of makes you want to connect with a person more. And I feel like even if the world didn't come crashing down for one of them, you could still have that level of connection between them, just like, trying to get, I thought it was so cute how Mitsuha was like trying to get Taki this date with his boss, and then ultimately ends up getting kind of jealous about the whole thing, which was kind of cute and kind of adorable. But like that whole thing, and I don't know, this is, I say all of this too, I meant to preface this at the beginning, is this is like probably in the top 5 of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. I love this movie so much because it makes me cry every time I watch it. And it's also the first movie in the history of the Moses household that has literally stopped an argument and put us on a path of like, we're happy and good right now because we mentally and emotionally bonded and like kind of bawled our eyes out together over this movie. So it has a special place in my heart, because not because of that particular event, but just in general, those types of moments. And so everything about this movie just speaks to me. I get it. But yeah, so you guys are right. That was an overlong, verbose way of me agreeing with you.
The extra point you brought up, though. I think all creatives have that connection of being able to understand each other and see life through another person's eyes, because our brains are wired the same, which brings very unique challenges to us. And so if you are a creative and you need someone to come alongside you in this crazy life full of our unique struggles that we face as creative writers, you should work with us, because we're here to coach you, to be able to give you encouragement from some place where we know where you're at, because we've been there. And hopefully that means that we can offer even better advice for you while helping you get your story to where it needs to be.
Absolutely.
I mean, what have you got to lose, people?
Sure.
We're all just going to be lonely anyway, so may as well come keep us company.
Okay, so here's another question. Would the story have the same emotional impact if the two were just connected by fate, but not by love?
Yeah, I think it would. I think so you ever read a story or watch a movie or show or whatever, and you're like, I wish the characters had stayed friends because it was more intimate that way. And once it goes into romance, it gets the whole thing. I think it's like it's different textures. It's like you ever just go around, you're like, if I don't have Chinese food right now, I'm gonna cry.
Yes.
And then there's this other
Yes.
time where you go, like I had this hot dog, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's kind of nice, and I ate it. I'm like, that is the most delicious thing I've had in a while, and this is amazing. I think it's kind of like that. I feel like sometimes a story, I think it would have worked here because it would have ultimately been about them. Ultimately, it's about them. I think the flavor of it works best as a romance because I think it has that kind of juvenile. When I say that as a compliment. Juvenile longing that works for the story. I think if it was about friends, I think it would have been a lot the same. I think the point, especially the climax of this movie, I think the point would have still sufficed. But I do think it's a bit of a flavor thing. I think it becomes not a flavor thing when suddenly the romance is tacked on. Or if it doesn't go for romance, actually, here's a potential hot take. I don't think it's a hot take, but potentially for some other people. The video game Ghost of Tsushima, which is amazing, by the way.
I've heard.
There's the main character and this other side character. It's like they're so shippable. Jin and Yuna, they are so shippable. And I swear, before this battle in the war, it's a war game. There's like he basically says, "I would die for you," and it just seems like the sparks are flying here. But like. And this is just my opinion, because honestly, you can't argue like, well, they're still together as friends. That means something. So it's true. But let's bear with me here for the sake of the argument. It feels like they should have been together and something was missing. So it feels like there's like an empty piece. So I think if the story is kind of building up to something, stick with it. But otherwise, in terms of this movie, I think it's a bit of a taste. Not taste, flavor. Flavor's the better term. Is kind of how I feel.
Okay.
I think there's also a difference between, okay, so I can't stomach contemporary romance because I feel like a lot of it is just like what Charles was explaining. It's just so surfacey and cringy, and I just have a really hard time stomaching it. I feel like very few books and movies, very few stories tap into what's deeper than just your cliche romance subplot or trope. So sometimes if you limit yourself to these characters need to only be platonic, it can help you explore the relationship deeper without just falling back on romance tropes that are shallow. So I have always appreciated stories that lean into that flavor of let's go deep, let's get to know these characters, let's go below the surface of your most popular romance book. And I find that a lot of stories that do that don't necessarily market themselves as romances, because sometimes when you frame the relationship in a different way, it can help your brain break out of the box that cliches have designed, and then you're forced to think deeper about it. So that's the flavor that I prefer, but everyone prefers a different flavor, and I don't mind romances that have actual depth behind them. But it has to be depth like real life struggle. Like not just, oh, we kissed and made up, it's fine. No.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I get that. Cause for me, I really love romance subplots. I do. I enjoy them. I think that they're fun. But I agree. I prefer them to have some level of depth to them, than just kind of we like each other. It's one of the reasons why I don't like insta love. It's one of the reasons why I think that, I don't like, I'm not a big fan of dark romance where it's just kind of like, me and Jalen were talking about this the other day, where it's kind of like you wrote a porno where basically it's just, we put these two people together to screw, and then we sprinkled some plot in there to see how it all turns out.
That's a bad thing.
No, listen, there's nothing wrong with pornography.
Right. Dark
That's fine.
romance is one of my favorite genres, but insta love,
I think that if it's your, there's nothing wrong with any of that. If it's your flavor, as we've said, as the word of the day seems to be, then so be it. I think you could definitely enjoy it. For myself, I like a little more substance. I prefer, make the characters. In my book, the characters are there's two romances, and one of which they are, when you first meet them, they used to be together, they're no longer together. And it's about that kind of journey of how do we get back to that place. And then, I can't tell you what happens without ruining it for you, but but then there's the other one where it's kind of, they were already in a relationship, but they've also had kind of there's real stuff of these are real people who have real problems. And I think that the best way to make a solid romantic subplot, and I guess this is the lesson that you can take from it, is that a lot of times people will say, I like this character and I like this character and I want to put them together. Or when they envision it, they envision just two people that they really want to be in love. I want Danny and Joni to be in love. That's what I want. But you didn't spend much time building up Danny and building up Joni on their own and letting them become people. And that's kind of a reflection of how a lot of people do relationships in real life, where they sort of define themselves by the person that they're with because they haven't spent a lot of time building up who they are and finding out who they are first. And I think that when you're writing a romantic subplot, figure out who your protagonist is, or whoever, even if it's not the protagonist in the love life. It's like a subplot of some characters that aren't the main characters. Figure out who they are on their own. What makes them tick? What makes them angry? What makes them, what traumatized them? You know what I mean? All of those things. And then you can sort of put them with somebody else and have this kind of thing of, it's like, I have issues. I have issues, you have issues, and we brush up against each other. So I really like that. I really like watching characters that have depth and then putting those deep characters together. Another thing that I think proves that this doesn't necessarily have, that this could have had just as much emotional impact, even if they weren't lovers or whatever you want to call it. Another example of this, we just watched this film recently of The Iron Giant, which is a perfect example of, it's a love story, but it's not a romantic love story. It's friends and their relationship and how the world isn't in peril, but a little town is in peril, and we have to kind of figure out how we're going to get through this thing, but we're best buds and we're going to figure it out together, and we love each other and we care about each other, and that's deep. So I think Iron Giant is kind of the answer to Your Name, in the sense of it can prove that you can tell a really, really great emotionally impactful story and not be dating or in love with one another. So perfect example. Here's a question. What emotional beats does a romantic subplot need to hit that a friendship subplot does not?
Okay.
Go for it.
The physical intimacy.
Okay.
Or the question of physical intimacy. Because we at Alba would like to clarify that sexuality is a vast spectrum of different elements of romance, gender. It's all this. And if you don't know that, then go read science fiction. Go read science fiction. Fine. But as a whole, though, I feel like there's an intimacy, a physical intimacy, that is different in a romantic story, in a romantic relationship, than a friendship. And I don't mean sex.
Hopefully it's okay. I was gonna say hopefully.
I don't mean sex, but like hugging your boyfriend is different than hugging your bro friend. Yeah. There is a different kind of ness, like the way, like I'm trying to remember like the first time I hugged my bro that I've known since high school, and it was a completely different context and the touch was different, but like the first hug I had from high school that was romantic, it was a completely different kind of sensation. It was a different type of energy, and I feel like there's a sort of fear. Like I feel like I would do like fist bump and pat on the back of my bro, but for a lady now would be like, these hands are monstrous, that kind of sort of feeling. So I feel, and then again, it's not really a great answer, but off the top of my head, going back to Frodo and Sam, which is like the bro romance story of all time. Not really, but it's definitely one of them. I feel like Frodo and Sam don't have that. And in that story, they often have to sleep kind of on each other because they have to huddle where they are. But a romance story, I feel there's a little bit more of a question there because you're poking and prodding, you're a little bit fearful. So it's not sex, it's more just
it's a tension.
Yeah, a different kind of honestly, forget touch. Just sitting on the couch together. you know,
Facts. Facts.
Or what's the thing from the Bob's Burgers? There's a great Bob's Burgers episode where Bob and the family have to cater to this couple that are getting married after like 2 months or something.
Oh, yeah, I remember that episode.
Which is hilarious, and there's some great stuff in there. But something that Linda Belcher keeps saying is she's like, this relationship's gonna crash. She's like, they haven't smelled each other's farts yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of a thing. Like, I think like friendships, you can fart all live long day, but then it's like, that's my take. I hope that's a good answer.
It's a good answer. I think it's a great answer.
I'm sticking with that one because I don't have anything better off the top of my head.
I agree.
I do have beats that are the same, but I can't think of, besides what Charles said, beats that are different.
Yeah, I do think it's the physical mostly. I think the greatest subversion of that, though, is that I've ever seen has been Smallville, where the Chloe and Clark relationship, they never quite get past they try very, very shortly to try to get beyond the we're just friends thing, and it just never gets there. But there's a story, I think it's Clark that tells the story, I can't remember, but he tells a story about when he first met Chloe, and he's like, he gave her this tour of the town or whatever, and then he brought her up to the barn, and then she kissed him, and he asked her, like, why'd you kiss me? And she was like, the line that she says is perfect, because she's like, I know that you've been thinking about it all day, and I wanted to get it over with so we can just be friends. And summed up their entire relationship as it went on, of just like these two people who, granted, one of them always held this candle for the other, but they just knew that the best thing for them was just being friends. And I think that physical thing is a big thing. And like I said, yes, I think it's also just intention. That's generally, neither person sees each other beyond that.
I do have another potential thing, is I think with bros, and by bros it could be sisses too, it could be, I'm just saying bros because I'm a dude, so I'm gonna go for my bromances, is I think there's an element, and again, this might be a little bit of Hollywoodness rather than like reality per se, and it's all complicated, is I think another beat that's a little different is not the proof of the love, but the challenge. Oh wait, Jared disappeared. Are we still live? No. Boss, where are you?
I think he's good.
But like, if my bro had to do some crazy thing, it's like, I'm gonna go do this crazy thing for my bro. But I think for romance, it's more of a challenge, like, how far are you? Is this infatuation or is this real? And I think this movie does that pretty bloody excellently with all the stuff they go through. And I can give other examples, but I think that'll suffice for now. Is I think not proof of love, I think test of love, I think might be the beat I'm thinking of.
My apologies for that brief interruption. The universe just punched me in the face because, ironically, as Charles was talking about the Bob's Burgers thing about you haven't smelled each other's farts, my dog, which is in here, has just been letting ass go this entire time, and it just stinks so bad that when I had to pause it, I had to like hack because it was just killing me. And I can't kick her out because like my wife does not want to deal with her right now. She's sick. But she's just stinking up this office, and I have to have the window closed because we have no heat, so I have to keep it from getting cold. So I'm just fucking hotboxing dog farts, and it's fucking gross. So I'm sorry.
I feel your pain.
So, I have smelled her farts, and I don't love her. I don't. To be fair, she's just returning the favor, so it's fine.
I think I answered the question, but then we got distracted.
We got super distracted by this miniature terrorist attack that seems to be happening in here, and I am truly sorry.
Dang, the sun was attacking me. The dog are attacking you. What's next?
And she just looks at me like, what are you going to do about it, bro? Like, fight me. I don't, sorry. So here's another question. Are romance stories overused? Or is the romance plot, whether it be full-on romance stories or subplots, do you feel like they are overused, or do you feel like they are just that powerful that they just kind of need to go on? Celine Dion, pun intended.
I think it's kind of a marketing thing. I think like that's kind of it, because the thing is, everyone bones. Like, that's why we're here after like thousands of years. And, like,
everyone farts, everyone bones. It's the sequel to the book.
Yeah. what I mean is that like the romance stuff is going to go on forever, and that's fine. That is human nature. I think it's just the issue is always just, is it good? And I think the reason, unfortunately, there's such a question because honestly, it's like, let's give a really interesting debate about that, but we would never do that for revenge stories. And that's because, romance stories were checked off God knows when into well, romance stories are girly. And if they're girly, that means they're gay. And if they're gay, that means they're bad. That's the hierarchy of idiocy in this regard. But, like, it is a part of life. That being said, just as there are great revenge stories, there are also bad revenge stories. And I think the romance stories, I think when marketing gets in the way, they're not really good. They're like, you've seen this kind of story a million times and it doesn't really matter. I think I just watched one like that too. I was like, this almost works, this almost doesn't, yada yada. But yeah, I mean, it's love. That's how this works. I mean, we can get into the whole Wish debacle about what Disney originally had planned for that, apparently, and etc. That was romance, and they cut romance because there's kind of this kind of new age. I'm getting a little of my soapbox here, but there's kind of, and I don't know if it's still around, but there's kind of this new age-ish idea that was developing when I was a teenager where it's like, no, we need to get rid of love and romance from our plots. I'm like, that's not how, you are not a better person because you don't like romance. That's not how life works. But again, that's me being an old man yelling at the clouds. Take that with a grain of salt.
I agree that romance is very much human, so it's going to endure because it's very much human.
Fire. Sorry.
However,
but there's always going to be.
I will say that shallow romances, the romance cliche, is way overdone. And that's because you're creating this wishful thinking that everyone lives in a world where humans are not messy, or human mess, like when humans brush up against each other, there's no friction. I think that if you want to have a good romance, it needs to have depth. You need to see the darkness in the humans that you're exploring and show how it doesn't fit together, but they make it work anyway. Because that's truer to real life. That's a more true story. So if you're going to write anything, I mean, same rule as applies to anything. If you're going to write anything, write it honestly. Mm-hmm. Don't sugarcoat it.
Agree.
Shrek, everyone.
And as far as like shallow, we're looking at you, 50 Shades. I'm just kidding. Just for the record, we will never.
No,
ever,
I was gonna say
ever talk about that on the show.
We're not looking at it.
I will never do that to Charles or Jaylon.
Thank you.
Ever. I have seen all of them, and I will never do that to you guys.
Thank you.
Because they're just Twilight with no vampires and werewolves.
Boring.
That's all, and lots of doing it. That's about it. So here's the last question that we have before we jump into the takeaways. You guys got your wish. I'm not doing the Angels and Devils this week for the sake of time. But
it sounds like you're setting me up for next time.
I promise you, I'm not. I'm not. Here's a question: how do you decide? So we've already established that not every single story needs a romantic subplot, right? Not every story needs that. How do you decide, if I'm a writer and I'm working on a story and I'm trying to figure it out, how do I decide if my character's connection should turn romantic? I have these two characters. They have a deep bond. It's, I like them together. I don't know if I like them together, but I do like when they are around each other. I like writing scenes with them. How do I decide if these two characters should turn romantic? How does one decide that?
Know your characters. Know them inside and out. Know them so well that if they do try to make it work being a couple, it'll immediately become apparent whether they can make it work or not. And I think that having that, like, if there's that tension there that's coming up because they have chemistry when they're around each other, try shoving them together and then see what kind of a mess that makes. Because if you know your characters deeply, you know their weaknesses, their strengths, their personalities. When they mesh with another character, just like if you mesh with another human, you're either going to clash or it's going to work. And it could be just as interesting if it clashes and then everything goes up in flames. So, maybe try it and see if it works. But I think that as long as you know your characters, you're going to know if it works or not.
Yeah, I think something interesting about this movie is the way the body swapping disrupts their lives is romance is disruptive. By technical definition, you are now working with a whole new schedule of things. So I think in that same way, if you're wondering about that, consider what is that going to do with the characters and the story, and if is it going to not add anything, because maybe even if it's disastrous, it can still add something. But consider what is that going to do with the plot? Is it going to be a new compartment on the train, or is it going to be like a fifth wheel kind of a shtick? Because it is by definition disruptive, and I think it's interesting because like it also is an expression of the characters too. So I think at the end of the day, it's not just plot; it's also what are your characters going to learn or say or do with that plot line. Because again, I think that the question goes back to, again, it's like, the old jokes, every young adult dystopian fantasy has a romance, right? Ooh, because it's the marketing and the blah blah blah, which is fine. But if you want to make it matter, it has to matter a little bit more. And so think about that. Think, if you do put these characters together, what happens after? Because I know TV has trained everyone to go, once they're together, then it's not interesting. Will they, won't they, is more interesting. Horse malarkey. A real good story will make it more interesting when they're together, because that's how life works.
Proof of that, Harley Quinn, the animated show, is, I haven't seen the new season, but up until season 4-ish, I believe it was season 4, is a great example of the whole will they, won't they being pretty much tossed out of the window pretty early on, and just kind of seeing how good a relationship can be and the kind of challenges a relationship can have when we have Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy together, and all the things that they have to survive and deal with as a couple. Is just as interesting as the whole, like, oh my god, are they going to be together? Or we almost got there and then we didn't. Which is great.
Season 2, there's a longing that you really feel. But season 3, there's a really fascinating tension. And in my opinion, for my taste and what I want, I think season 4 completely fell off the roof and broke it back. The show did. But I was wondering, I was like, are they going to break up by season 3? Because I was trained. They're going to fall apart. But there is a really emotional and meaningful tension in season 3 because of what you just said, Jared. Because you are wondering, oh, shoot, how does that actually work? So, yeah,
exactly.
Totally agree.
On top of that, I would also say, in regards to what Jaylon said about knowing your characters, here is a lesson, and I really do. I'm going to tell you this, guys, in the spirit of being transparent. I feel really icky about making mention of my book to anybody. I don't like shameless self-promotion.
We want to hear about it.
It just feels gross. Fair enough. But the lesson I learned from writing My Sister's Keeper is, you will not, I don't give a shit what you do, you will not know your characters until you write them multiple drafts. I thought I knew Jaden, I thought I knew Olivia, I thought I knew Alana, and I did not know. I feel like I just now, and I want to say we're technically, I feel like we're like 4 or 5 drafts in. I don't really know the exact number that we're in, but we're multiple drafts in, and I feel like I'm just now understanding who these characters are. And just like, not only that, but Jaylon, who's been doing the editing of it, she'll tell me this character will say this or that, and I'll be like, we both collectively know, yeah, this character would say that, because we know them, but it's because we've spent so much time with them. So, I mean, write your first draft and put those 2 fuckers together. Let them be together. See what happens. If it works, it works. Great. Get to know them, whatever. Or separate them completely and don't do anything with them. And then you might find in the second draft, you know what? Billy really, 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 really does belong with Lucy. I never planned on them being together, but they, the way he looked at her in the barn, I don't know. Maybe it works. I have the weirdest hypothetical.
It's awesome.
So forgive me.
I like how you mentioned the barn and intimacy twice. So physically, there's fantasy going on here because of Smallville. You're like, I need to wear a Superman t-shirt in the bar, but I need to be atop. Like, I need space. I need to be higher, like I'm floating. I just wrote some weird Superman erotic fiction. There you go. Well, the movie is closer than ever. That's why.
This is probably the first NSFW Let's Talk Stories episode, because we've talked about boning, and there's no boning in this movie.
No.
There's several boob grabs, but
yeah. Oh, that's uncomfortable. I was like, I can't blame it.
I couldn't eat it. I'm sorry, but I had to. I remember when I watched with my wife, and I was like, she was like, "Oh, that's so gross," and I was like, "Listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. If I woke up in your body tomorrow, that is happening." multiple times. I don't care. I'm a freak. Call me a perv. I don't care. It's gonna happen. I'm doing it.
Honestly, it doesn't even have to do with perviness.
I just want to see what it feels like.
Yeah, the curiosity.
You're a
I mean,
teenage
the
boy.
scene.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It makes
the scene
sense.
where she had to go to the
I'm
bathroom.
a grown man, and
body.
I'd still be curious about it. I'm still just like, okay, what is this? So, I mean, yeah, besides the point. The point is, yeah, I think that those are the ways that you ultimately decide if the character should date. That being said, here are 3 key... Oh, yes.
I was going to say real quick, I'm reining in my immaturity here. To go back to another thought I had listening to you and Charles have such good points about whether your character should have a romance or not. Think about how it develops the characters and how it develops your theme. If it is going to develop your characters, it should develop your characters so that we get to know them more and it reveals more details about them. But does the details that it reveals fall in line with your theme, or does it, like Charles said, add a fifth wheel that doesn't work with the story that you're trying to tell? So, all right, I'm done, as you were.
I agree. So here are the 3 steps, and this pretty much just sums up everything that we have just said of how to decide. So like I said, you're stuck, you're writing a character, you don't know if they should or should not have romance, or if your story itself needs romance. Here are the 3 things that will help you to decide. 1, examine the core theme. Ask yourself if romance reinforces or distracts from the main theme. If the story is about self-discovery or grief, does the romance amplify that, or does it run it off the rails? Number 2, assess the character arcs. Ask yourself, do my characters evolve because of the romantic connection? And if not, consider if friendship or another form of intimacy serves their growth better. And then lastly, test the emotional stakes without the romance. If you can remove the romantic angle, does the emotional core weaken or stay strong? If it stays strong, you might not need it at all. Those 3 things are the best ways for you to decide whether or not your story needs romance or not. Run it through the gambit, see what it is. If that breakdown helped you, imagine what we could do with your own story. We work with authors on this exact issue, figuring out what connections best serve their narrative. And if you're stuck, grab your free consult. The link is in the show notes. That being said, remember to also grab your romantic subplot quick guide, which is also in the show notes. So that being said, I'm going to hit you guys with the one segment that will stay, and that is the lightning round, our quick fire questions. So
one I'm so bad at.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I enjoy doing it. I'm so evil. I'm sorry.
I need it, I guess.
No, you're gonna get so much better at it. I promise. We listen, we don't judge. That is the whole thing. Here we go. Best romance movie or book you have ever written or watched. Yeah, crush you.
No idea. I mean, there's too many.
Pick one.
There's too many.
Pick one.
Randomly pluck it.
Like Casablanca.
Oh, I forgot about that one. It's a good one.
Bunch of Disney movies.
Oh, I know. This is something you and I talked about this week, Charles, because we were both watching Epic, and we both agreed that Odysseus and Penelope's relationship was the most romantic.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's very, very romantic. Yeah, so that's a good choice.
Specifically, the Epic version of it.
I can't decide from anything that's out into the world of existence off the top of my head right now, so I will do what I did last week, and I will pick something from my own work, and I will say Olivia and Wyatt are my favorite romance of all of fiction. So
that's a very
Charles,
close second.
You will discover this, and I hope you will join us on the ship of Wyatt and Olivia. I hope you listeners who read the book will also join us on the ship of Wyatt and Olivia, because they are
all be as emotionally destroyed as I was.
So here we go. Next question: most forced romance plot that you've ever seen?
There's too many there too.
There's so many. Okay, I'll say the most classic one, but I hate saying this because I love this movie as a movie. As long as you're not trying to make it a romance movie, this is an incredible movie. The Princess Bride. I think Wesley and Buttercup were a very forced romance because we didn't get to know them beyond...
These are words you
I think saying. I like you. But, however, it is one of the best movies in the world, if not the best movie in the world, if you don't try and take it seriously as a romance.
Fair enough.
It is a romance, and I do take it seriously. And it is.
You watch your mouth.
I will. Force. Honestly, I can't think of anything specific. There's like so many, but anything in a TV show where it's like suddenly these two characters are just like, "Hey, babe," we're like, and I'm like, no, don't do that. You were interesting before. Why are you doing this now? I cannot. Holy. Oh my gosh. Okay. I just
We're all
remembered.
getting struck by lightning in the light.
Okay. It's Mobile Suit Gundam, the romance, quote unquote, between, I think it's Mirai. She's becomes Bright's girl. She's Bright's Captain Bright's romance, and there's like this jock that comes into the story, and they barely have a conversation, and then she's in love with him, and it makes no flipping sense, and it becomes a plot line that threatens to destroy the ship that she's a part of. The ship, the metaphorical ship, not the actual ship in the sci-fi story. Mobile Suit Gundam, guys. Sorry, folks. They're young otaku. They don't know, but that drives me nuts. Even I was talking to this with my brother and my sister because we read the Origin manga, which is an adaptation of the OG show, and we're like, "What is this?" No, a lot of superhero movies,
Yeah.
and I don't get it. But Charles, you're a big superhero person. Exactly. That's why I know it's stupid.
I like this answer.
I'm torn, unfortunately. I'm torn between Clark and Lana Lang in Smallville. And that's more about because it was just a giant will they, won't they that just drove me insane. I wanted them to be together so bad in the beginning, and then they just drew it out for so long that by the time they got together, I was just like, don't like you anymore. And then they broke up, and then they got back together, and I was just like, nope, give me Lois. Just give me Lois. I'm done.
Lois is the perfect woman.
But if not that, I would say Noah and Allie. And I know, but Noah and Allie from The Notebook are by far the worst. It's not really a subplot, but it is, because the whole movie's a damn romance movie. But I arguably is the worst romance movie ever, and I hate it so much. I hate it.
I think there are way worse romance movies, but I've never been a big fan of The Notebook.
The Notebook is the worst. It's
also
the worst.
Quick question while we're here of like a thing. Do you prefer Ryan Gosling when he's older or when he's younger?
Older.
I agree. I think he's more attractive when he's older. I don't know why. That's just me. Moving on.
Am I the only one that finds him not attractive at all?
You're stupid, Jaylon.
I mean, the question was, do I find him more attractive one way or another? So I had to pick one. My wife was just telling me the other day how attractive he was when we watched The Fall Guy for the 50th time. And I was like, he looks like a dog. He looks like a golden retriever to me. But not like a golden retriever that you want to take home and love, but more like a golden retriever that, like, you know it's a dog. And when you look at it, you're like, you're a dog. And I know you're a dog. That's what it's like for me.
Okay.
I'm not saying that he's ugly. I'm just saying he's a dog. Favorite non-romantic character duo.
There's a lot.
I thought you were gonna say Sam and Frodo. That's what I was expecting Charles to say.
I love Sam and Frodo, but even then in Lord of the Rings, there's great combos. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. There's sidekicks and partners and father sons, mother daughters, best friends. Oh my goodness gracious! I have no idea.
I got mine. They're my favorite right now that I can think of. The first people that came to my mind.
Here, Kitty Pryde and Wolverine. I've always loved that friendship.
Very good one. First ones that came to my mind: Goku and Vegeta.
Interesting choice. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I dig that.
Mostly just because I really need to show some love to this movie after I dragged it just a little bit. I'm gonna say Fezzik and Inigo in The Princess Bride.
I respect that.
Okay. All right, last one. What is more satisfying, a romantic kiss or a friendship hug?
Ooh.
Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit prejudiced in this sense. I feel a friendship hug is more satisfying because what pops up my head is dudes hugging, and dudes don't hug. They're not allowed, or not hug on screen. They're not allowed to hug. So, like, speaking of Lord of the Rings, there's guys that hug each other all the time in that story, and it hits. So for me, that's really big. I love a good kiss and all that, but like two bras hugging, it's like bra.
Yeah,
you don't get to see that a lot. So that's my.
I feel deeper when I see two characters hugging as opposed to kissing. So I will agree with Charles's personal preference. I would prefer to see two friends hug.
I will say this, and this is going to sound a little sad, but I also prefer a friendship hug, and that's because I need a hug.
Yeah, see?
I need a hug all the time. So, yeah. Okay. So that is our lightning round, guys. You guys did well. I know I threw you for a loop with the infinite possibilities of things that you could possibly do, and it will only get worse as we go forward. But nonetheless, I like making you guys rack your brains. Going forward, the easiest way to do it, guys. First thing that pops into your head, just go with that one. That's your answer.
I try.
The problem is my brain doesn't generate any kind of ideas. It's a blank slate.
Oh my god. First of all, that I try though was just, I swear, by the end of the year, I'm gonna put together a Charles all-time great like highlight reel. The cuddly boy still gets me. I was so perfect. So perfect. But yes. Okay, so as we're getting ready to head out of here, you guys, what are your recommendations for this week?
Going back to the musical epic, Charles arranged a beautiful video, film, animation to this musical that is amazing. I loved it so much. I put it on without telling my husband what it was because I knew that with it being a musical, he was not going to be into it. So I just put it on without telling him anything. And then I was working and he was on his phone, but by the end of it, he was off his phone and he was completely captured by the story. So kudos to you for that one.
He also reached out to me and told me to watch it. So
well done, Charles.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I made like a personal thing for my siblings, and I just shared it with those I know, where I took, people have done some incredible animatics. In fact, hopefully, if my project actually goes through, I will be contacting one of these animatic persons, because holy crap, they're amazing. Of the adapting the musical epic. So I took that, added some sound effects, assembled some music into as much as I could, and I added my own title cards, assembled credits to try to make it as much of a film as possible. So I did not make anything other than I assembled everything, but I'm very glad that you said that. Was very, very happy about that. And convincing anyone to get into a musical who doesn't like musicals.
Yes, it is. It is actually the assembling of it is still a wonderful feat. I am halfway through it, and now it's up there with Your Name, in the sense of able to crack tension in tense situations and force people who are not getting along to stop and be like, let's look at this. And Charles, you did that for the Moses household, so we are grateful for you for that. Thank you.
I've been saving this for a long time. My recommendation is probably the best video game I've ever played. It's a story that I adore, that I have deep roots for. I don't care if it's the original. I don't care if it's the remake. It's Final Fantasy VII. You want a great romance story? That's a great romance story. That is beautiful. I mean, Robert Pattinson's a huge fan of this, and he said once, he's like, this is the game where boys learn what love is. And I was like, crap, he's right. He's right. Like, it's so weird. But I love it so much that for Christmas, I got from one of my siblings this little display case of one of the OG scenes that I have on my desk with two of the characters. So that is how much I love it. It is, I can go on and on and on about that game. In terms of writing, it is just, it's one of those, like, you know, why can't I be as good as this piece? You can learn so much. If you're not familiar with that game, you can learn so freaking much of just making characters come to life. Making, like, as you saw in that picture, the original game, they don't even have hands. They're these weird polygon characters. When I played that game, they were so real to me, and I love them dearly. That's how good the writing is in terms of just making them pop. Great. It's a gold mine, that game, for lessons about writing. Absolutely. And I just adore it so much.
As usual, I always say this. I always say I always have more than one, unfortunately, because I'm a bum, and I spend a lot of time watching a lot of things.
You're the most educated
Not
in story of all of
You're
us.
a potato.
Right. I'm a potato. Oh, anyway, sorry.
Okay, name both of those moments, please.
Fair enough. Fair enough. The first one would have to be my favorite anime of all time, which is Phantom, Requiem for the Phantom, which is all about child soldiers, assassins, and trauma and shared trauma and how one deals with that. It is so freaking good. And if you want to learn cinematography from an anime, that one just seems to crush it with just like, I've learned more from about cinematography from that anime than I have anything else that I've watched live action. I'm just like, I gotta steal that shot. I have to do that someday. That's really great. But that's a great one. The other one is more of a guilty pleasure, but it's not even a guilty pleasure because I know a lot of people do like it. It's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I've been going back through it. Yeah, I've been going back through it. I was telling Jaylon this, the first time I ever was introduced to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a friend of mine loaned me season 5 of their box set, and that was just where I started. I started on season 5, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool. I had no idea who anybody was or what any of the history, but the season 5 was just so fun for me. Once More with Feeling is still by far my favorite episode of the entire series, with the musical episode.
6.
Yeah, that's what it was. Not 5, 6. It was season 6 that I got to borrow.
6 is a piece of season.
No, but I enjoyed it. I hate it.
I understand why, but that episode, the musical episode, is so good. Honestly, Spike's last lyric to Buffy, "Life's not a song," and when I'm really down, I'll sing that to myself because I'm like,
6.
That's it. And when I saw that episode, I had a real mental breakdown, and so when Spike sang that, it hit me. Sorry, that's my own Buffy.
Yeah, so season 6, that's what I meant. It was season 6. For some reason, for this time, I thought it was season 5, but it was season 6. And that was the first introduction I had to Buffy for years. And then later on, when streaming was like a real thing, when people stopped buying DVD box sets as like a regular thing, I finally was able to see, when it came to Hulu, I was like, okay, I'm going to actually go through this thing and watch it. So for the last 2 weeks, I've been watching it. I'm on season 3 now.
The best, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good. Oh my god. Oh my, don't even get me started. But it is good. My wife hates it. My wife doesn't hate the show. She just hates the fact that, like, I put it on at the worst times and then kind of fall asleep. It'll be like 7 o'clock. I'll put it on. We'll be good. And then somewhere around 9, I'm like, all right, and I'm out. And she just is left. And I fall asleep with the remote, so she's just kind of left to watch it. She hates that. But, suffer. Anyway, it's a fantastic...
Love.
This is how it is. Some people make their partner smell their farts. Some people make them watch Buffy while they fall asleep. That's our show for the week. Next week, we have another guest. Jess Ann is a writer on Substack. You guys will enjoy it. We're going to be talking about the hero's journey, and we are talking about Star Wars: A New Hope. That is what we are doing next week. The level of excitement on Charles's face was just made that entire sentence worth it. So that is what we are doing next week. Other than that, guys, thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for bearing with us. Thank you for listening to us, all 5 of you. And
thanks, Mom.
Thank you for finding value in all the fun that we have nerding out about stories.
Absolutely. If this has helped you or benefited you in any way, please share it with a friend. And if you do find that you need a little bit of help of just getting things going with your story, feel free to do a free consult. We have the link in the show notes. 30 minutes that'll change your life and your stories. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Have a good week.